this has been on my mind for the past for a long time. I wanted to do this one, but I didn't have much time to actually make the presentation. So I don't know if it's in order. It should be. There's more people outside? That's it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, okay, okay. Hello, welcome to TSM. Haven't you been here the whole day, so it's not exactly welcome. Okay, today I'd like to do, it's not exactly a masterclass, because most of the masterclass implies that I'll do a lot of talking and leave it at that. I'll give you a lot of info and then you take it and do with it what you will. But with this, I'd like to tell you the story of how charts worked and what they were to start with, and then at the end have a question answer or have a discussion on how we can maybe get our own sort of chart going and what use it would be. Okay, so there's a lot of number work in this one. One has to look at numbers in order to understand these charts, but let's see how it goes. For those of you who don't know me, I was a singer for a heavy metal band called Millennium. We worship Satan as our primary guide and light. It's a joke. We didn't really have a healthy... Huh? I'm this guy here. That's me. I didn't really have a good relationship with Satan. It was a more casual, sort of flirtatious thing. But then I worked in FM radio for a long time, for about 12, 13 years. I started Red FM. I worked for a couple of other radio companies. And that's when it really reminded me what my passion was with numbers, and when it comes to numbers and music. I was also a DJ for many, many years. And both these positions of being a DJ and being a radio programmer, one is dependent on knowing what people want to hear, what they like to hear, rather than what I would like them to hear. As a singer, and as with most, in the case of most of you, it's not so much knowing what people would like to hear, but what you play, and hopefully they would like it. And that's the position I was in when I was a singer with my band Millennium. We did our own music, and we did our own style, and hopefully people would like it, and that's how we went about our business. But as a radio programmer, which is primarily music, and understanding what songs to play, how many times to play them, when to not play them, what songs not to play is a very important question. I relied on a lot, and I mean a lot of data, to give you some idea of the amount of data that I would work with in a radio station, and my budget for research, just for getting the numbers, not for analyzing the numbers, but for getting the numbers each year was $1 crore plus. And I did this for about 10, 12 years. So I spent a lot of money on just trying to understand specifically what songs people wanted at that particular time, which city they wanted those songs in, and also, remarkably, when they didn't want those songs. Radio is about playing the right music. It's also about stopping playing the wrong songs at the right time so you don't become irrelevant. But really, this understanding of numbers in music has been a passion since childhood. When I used to listen to radio in the UK, on Sunday night, there would be a show called the UK Top 40. And it was a radio show, I think at 4 o'clock in the evening. And me and my brother, we'd listen to this show because Sunday you got nothing better to do. So you just listen to the show, and we would get very excited as the countdown got through number 20, then 15, then 10, and then the top 5. And I'll be saying, this song is there. Oh my God, it hasn't come yet. Maybe there's something new. And it really would be a thrill ride to see what was the song at number 3, 2, and eventually what song hit number 1. But even then it occurred to me, what does it mean to be number 1? What does it mean to be number 2? What does it mean to be number 3? And even then in school, I would see graffiti on the wall like the Sex Pistols and Deep Purple. And those bands were discussed and talked about, but they were never to be seen in the chart. So it did occur to me, what does it mean to be in the chart? The question, how does one get a song in the chart, and what does it mean to have a song in the chart? What is the relevance? What does it actually mean? I was asking the question then. And when I was a DJ in radio and FM radio, I tried my best to understand that and to use data to be a better DJ and to be a better radio programmer. Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit about how charts work. What is a music chart is probably the best way to start. A music chart, you're familiar with the two biggest ones. Probably the biggest one you would have heard of is the Billboard chart. The Billboard chart goes back quite a few years, and I'll tell you how it works. But most charts function in the same way. They either divided by the genre of music. Billboard has an R&B chart. In fact, they invented the term rhythm and blues. That's a Billboard term. R&B was invented in the 60s by a guy called Jerry Wexler in order to get black music into the chart and make it relevant without being degrading to the Negro community. So they called it the rhythm and blues chart. And that term still remains today. But it's not really a genre. Rhythm and blues has so many things in it, from disco to funk to soul to, ironically, not blues. But a lot of dance-oriented music at that time, the 60s and 70s, and even today we refer to Bruno Mars as an R&B artist, not what he really is, which is a funk artist. So anyway, we'll come to all of that. But a chart, at the end of the day, it tells you what is the most popular song at that time. The time is important, because if you see the song is at number 1, the first question one should ask is when? When is this chart made? Is it last week, last month, last year, last decade? That's a very important thing. And then also, where? What is the geographical area for that chart? Is it the US? Is it India? Is it the UK? Is it Australia? And lastly, what exactly are you comparing to? Are you looking at albums? Are you looking at specific songs? Or in some cases, are you looking at artists? There's charts which position the artist. Later on, as we've seen in the last 10 years, there's a lot of data, in particular digital data, which helps us understand much better which artists, which songs, and which albums should be in the charts, and the charts kind of could make themselves. And let's get cracking. Does it tell me what are the best songs? The charts tend to tell people what are the most popular songs, not necessarily the best song. My idea of a best song is a song that's mostly rock, hard rock. I can bang my head to it. It has some meaning to it, and it's got a solid guitar rhythm to it. Somebody else's song may be totally different to that. So the term best is a very ambiguous song. I could say this guitarist plays fastest, or this drummer is the loudest, or this particular EDM tune or this EDM loop is being used the most. But none of these expressions reflect if it's the best or the worst or one anywhere along that line. So what it does tell me is not so much the best songs, but the most popular songs. So the question really to answer is, how do we gauge popularity? The word popularity itself comes from people or some Latin pop, something it would have to do with people. So it does reflect the number of people who think this song is good. Fair? Simple as that. A pop chart is talking about songs which people have listened to, and a number of people at a given time, at a given location, feel that this is the best. Do charts manipulate me? Well, I'll show you and I'll demonstrate that they absolutely do. The charts themselves can be manipulated, and people have manipulated them. But even if they are done in all honesty, the chart itself will manipulate its own findings the next week. For example, if you see a song at number 1 and you haven't heard it, you're likely to hear it. And if you hear it and you're exposed to it, you're more likely to want to hear it again the next week. Hence, just by being at number 1 for 1 week may help it become number 1 the next week. I'll explain a little more clear as we go along. Billboard magazine was the first published chart of any sort. It came out, I've written it down, 1941. Billboard magazine said, let's put a categorical chart of what are the best songs at that time. And they had a methodology, a 3-prong methodology for gathering data. One was radio airplay. Radio airplay simply means in the US, for the longest time, you've had private FM radio channels. The way FM radio works, it's very simple. It's the way most broadcast media works. In fact, it's the way all broadcast media works if it's advertising revenue based. You play music, and if people like the music, they stay listening to you. While they're listening to the music, the song ends, and you have a commercial in the middle of it. The song finishes, an ad comes, a jingle, then another song comes. So the real trick is for a radio station to give you the impression that you like this song, I know you like this song, after this I'm going to play something that you don't like, but hang on, because after that I'll play you a great song. It doesn't work so well in India, even though I've programmed for so many years. It's a different ballgame in India. We don't have the strength of genres, we don't have the strength of different musical communities, at least commercial music communities, and that's a problem which we'll look at later. But radio airplay simply means a DJ would want to play the songs that the people want to hear. So in a very real way, the 400 or 500 radio stations across the country in the US in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, they would make a list of songs that they played. They would send that list in, or rather, each song, how many times that song was played. They would send it into Billboard magazine, and they would collate per song how many times it's got played across America. Now, it's very inaccurate, extremely inaccurate, because a country and western station in Dallas may have a listenership of 1 million, and they played one song 10 times. A radio station in Alaska may have a listenership of 1,000 people, and they may play the same song 100 times. But that 100 would be compared to the same Dallas station in the same number. So it doesn't make much sense. The point I'm trying to make here is, just because a DJ plays the song over and over, doesn't necessarily mean that many people have heard the song or indeed like the song. In the long run, if people stop listening to that radio station, we'll figure out that they don't like the overall music. But it's difficult to pinpoint which songs they don't like. Another data point was jukeboxes. In fact, jukeboxes created the radio station format Top 40. The story is, everyone knows what a jukebox is? Yeah? It's just, I mean, even I've never seen one. I'm nearly 50. I've never actually seen a working jukebox. But the idea was that the Americans have these places called drugstores. They sold milkshakes and Coca-Cola and pastries, egg puffs, parathas. I doubt it. But they sold snacks for, the young people would hang around. And what they didn't sell was drugs. Ironically, it was called a drugstore. But in the corner, there would be a jukebox. And people will go up to the jukebox, put 10 cents in or 5 cents in, a certain amount of money, and select the song they wanted to hear. Now, this is a very interesting phenomenon that we haven't really experimented in India at all with. The idea of one person being responsible for what everyone listens to, just the one song. Imagine it yourself. Imagine yourself going to a party and somebody says, hey, why don't you play one song? You select the song. You plug in your phone. I did this recently at a staff party. I thought, how tough can it be? I know music, but I didn't. And everyone hated the stuff I played. I was a little upset about it. But it wasn't that difficult actually to play if I'd actually used my common sense. If I'd actually put some thought into it, I would have been able to gauge what that party wanted. But I did, as most of us would do, I played what I wanted to hear and convince myself that everyone else would want to hear it. This is not a very good programming strategy, but unfortunately, it's what most people would do. Now, the same idea would go to a jukebox. Any one of you would go to the list of songs, 50, 100, 150 songs, and say, I want to hear that. And you'd play it, you'd press the button, and the song would start. And if it's a good song, everyone's going to turn around and say, respect. And you're the dude. If it's a bad song, the opposite. Everyone's going to turn around and say, why? And you feel like a schmuck. So it's not the best thing to do. But the idea of actually choosing a song became very, very interesting. So young people tended to not play what they wanted to hear, but what they already heard other people playing and seeing the reaction from everyone else. So you go and play a song, and everyone turns around and says, hey, nice tune. An hour later, I'm the hero, I'll play exactly the same song because I've seen it work. Understand, I'm not playing my favorite song. I'm playing the song which I feel will give me the best response. Popularity at any age is important. So I'll play the song, everyone's going to say, hey, not bad. Now, bear in mind that there could be 200 or 300, sometimes 500 songs in a jukebox. What somebody figured out is there was only actually between 30 and 50 songs ever used. Typically, there were 40 songs played again and again and again and again. The other 350, 450 songs were never actually played. Over a month, over a year, the records were brand new. And of these 40 songs, which will be changed, a few added, a few taken away every few weeks, these 40 songs will get played again and again and again. And that was the start of what's called Top 40 radio. The idea of not playing the intuitive variety of music to everyone. If you program a radio station, you think, let me play a jazz song, a blues song, a rock song, an EDM song, a hip-hop song, something for everyone, right? But we all know it actually doesn't work. It actually doesn't work. If people like your music, good. But as many people will like it, there'll always be more people disliking it. And the narrower you go into a genre, the more intense the dislike people have for it, and the more intense the likability for it. You get into a really tight genre like prog rock, for example, there's a lot of passion there with a very small amount of people. Same thing for grunge, for example. There's a very small amount of people who would love the music passionately. Become broader, and things like hip-hop, specifically artists like maybe Eminem and 50 Cent, there's a lot of people who like them somewhat or quite a bit. Well, with Eminem, the passion is very high, but I think you get my point. When we get to pop artists like Justin Bieber, there's a whole bunch of people who say, it's okay, it's nice. And another bunch of people saying, it's not so good. But there's very little out-and-out hatred and out-and-out love for these artists. And I think you'll see this in all of your music. Yeah? So the idea of the pop song was kind of created by the jukebox. So both of these data points went into the Billboard chart. But there was one more, which is record sales. Now, I'll go over to the jukebox, and I'll put my coin in there, and I'll select a song, and I'm a hero. I've seen you be a hero, now I'm a hero also. We're all heroes. Everyone, Vehrnon selected a nice song. That's a very different action because I'm putting 10 cents or 1 cent in there. That's a different action from going to the shop, going through what they have, and buying a record, putting my money down and actually owning this record. It's a lot more expensive. So the decision process is actually different for two reasons. One, I'm spending a lot more money, and two, I don't have to, or rather, I'm not going to get rewarded by this purchase by anyone saying, hey, good selection, Vehrnon, well done. It's just a personal choice for me. You'd see it later on in the 80s with the advent of the headphones and the personal stereo. Music patterns would change dramatically because people wouldn't have to justify what they were listening to. In the old days before that, most music was consumed in a group, either with a radio that was loud enough for the family or in a car with everyone sitting there. So when you're selecting a song, you select it for everyone. But when you get personal headphones, two things happen. One, you can hear your own music, and two, no one has to find out what you're listening to. So a big, butch, macho, leather-clad, 6'4" guy may be listening to Ariana Grande. It's on headphones, no one's going to know. And a demure 14-year-old girl may be listening to out-and-out death metal. We don't know. We don't know anymore. They don't have to justify it because no one knows. So as opposed to the jukebox, it's a very personal experience now. When you're buying the music, it's a similar thing. The other thing is you're putting big money down, so it's an investment. You're actually buying into that artist. Anyway, these are the three data points. Radio play, how many times a song got played. Record sales, how many records were sold that week. We're talking about a time frame of 1 week. And jukebox, listings. So the jukebox will get played, somebody will come and have a listen there and say, this got played a lot, maybe this not got played so many times. All of this data will be collated and formed and gone through, manipulated, and eventually you would get the Billboard chart. And there was a hot dance chart, there was an R&B chart, there was an album chart, and there was the hot singles chart. This is the hot singles chart. This one's from the 70s, this is from the 80s. It's still very much around today. Billboard is still a magazine that hosts content about music. It's absolutely worth reading for anyone in the business. In the UK, things are a little different. The UK have always been a little bit more, or rather a little less conservative in terms of music. That's why such a small country, so much variety of music and so many artists have come out of the UK. For the size of the country and the population compared to other countries, it's disproportionately large, the amount of music, the amount of artists, the amount of genres, the amount of songs, successful songs that have come out of the UK. And there might be a reason for it, which is difficult to see at face value. And I think it has something to do with the chart. When you're dealing with data that essentially has 3 data points, all these 3 data points, you're looking at a very slow-moving chart. If a song gets to number 1, bear in mind, look at how it works. The song is being played heavily on radio, it's been sold a lot, and radio, it's being played a lot on the jukebox. So the song goes to number 1. The vast majority of people are going to go and find a song to listen to by virtue of where it is in the charts. You're not going to say, what's number 40? Let me hear that. If you haven't heard the radio, if you're not totally familiar and up to date with music, if you're one of the regular people, then you'd say, what's on the charts? And you'll see number 1, and you'll say, oh, number 1. Okay, first thing, the number 1 song, I'm going to play it on the jukebox and show off. I don't have to watch you play it now. I can play it myself. I know it's number 1. Secondly, I'm going to buy a copy myself. And thirdly, ironically, the radio is going to play it because I've done this and I've done this. Because radio plays it, all the data goes back here. The song does what? It stays at number 1 for another week. The next week, the same cycle happens all over again, and the song stays there. The net result is the Billboard chart is a very conservative, very slow-moving chart. It's unlikely for a song to go bang straight at a number 1. In fact, it's very rare. The same thing for albums. It's very, very rare that a song goes straight to number 1. But with the UK chart, things were different. The UK chart did have sales, but it didn't have radio and it didn't have jukeboxes. It just had sales. Now, some of you are wondering, obviously, how this data was actually collated. This we're talking about in the UK somewhere around the 60s to 70s when the chart actually was developed. And at that time, the telephone was considered to be a piece of technology and should be used to the best advantage. The very first BBC official top 20 was collated by one person calling up 10 retail shops, the shops, mind you, calling up the shops and saying, can you tell me your 10 best-selling songs for this week? That's all he did. He collated the data, pen and paper, did the maths, and turned out the very first UK official top 10, which will eventually become the top 20. And that was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Up until the 90s, it didn't really change. It was the same process. They never really took radio airplay into consideration because most radio in the UK, in fact, all radio up until the 80s in the UK was private. Like All India Radio, the UK has BBC Radio. So it didn't really change that much. Yeah? Later on, downloads would influence the UK chart also. Download data. And at the same time, YouTube data would also come in. And it's YouTube which is really fascinating. Download data is interesting because you're still buying. You're still buying the song. You're spending money for it. But YouTube is interesting because YouTube, it's a very active process of watching a video. Now, bear in mind, we're talking about songs, not videos here. But YouTube is absolutely, it's not even primarily, it is a video streaming service, not an audio streaming service. It's the biggest streaming service in the world, hands down, by the way. It's bigger than Spotify, Apple Music, and all of these combined. It's bigger than that many, many times over. That's the size of YouTube. We'll have a look at their data in a little while. Okay, let me backtrack a tiny bit just to put things into context. Billboard, we talked about sales here. Now, in the UK, the sales were calculated by somebody calling up 10 shops every single week. Eventually, those 10 shops will become 20, 30, and eventually 75 record shops all over the country. On a Thursday morning, somebody from the BBC, the official chart, would call up and say, tell me your top 10 songs and how many you've sold. Eventually, I think it would be 75 different shops, private shops, but the shops themselves would say, this is what we've sold. In the US, the Billboard, they would look at sales not from the shops themselves, but by the record label. Record labels in those days would manufacture the record and send it out to the shops. Now, anyone knows how retail works. You can either sell the item to the shop at one price, and if they don't sell it, it's their problem. Or you give it to the shop at a much lower price, but if it's not sold, the person will take it back. You understand the difference? And in the US, a lot of record shops said, let's take these songs, but these records I'm going to take, and if I don't sell it, I'm going to give it back to you. So when you're taking data from the record label is absolutely inspired to say, my song sold the most, my song sold the most. But you needed to actually show that the record was manufactured. The story goes that there's a lot of rivers, a lot of dumps in the US filled with hundreds of thousands of records, vinyl records, which were made, never played, never sold, but they were manufactured. And the record label would lie to Billboard saying, we made these and we sold these. They would make paperwork to say they sold. The reason they would do that is because if the song got into the chart, then people might hear it and it might actually climb. It might actually climb up into the chart. People will actually buy it. Radio stations would actually play it. The jukeboxes, people would actually select the song on the jukeboxes. Is this clear? Because numbers, I know that musicians don't like numbers. I personally love numbers. I think it's fascinating to see how these things work. And when we're talking about a good song, a bad song, it's very, very ambiguous. It's very tough. Your great song may not be my great song, but this is an opinion. But when we're talking about numbers, how loud it is, no one's going to say, make it louder. No engineer talks about louder, louder. They talk in measurements of volume, whether it's a dB or a level on a dial. They'll give you some sort of measurement. Put it on 9, put it on 10, a number. So we're all dealing with numbers, even on a distortion level. You'll put 9 distortion or 10 distortion or a delay. There's some sort of numbers there. So you're working with numbers as musicians, whether you know it or not. I'm requesting you to go a step further and analyze consumption. How do people, non-music passionate people, people we don't know, regular people, how do they consume music? And when I mean consume, I mean at a commercial with a commercial value. Because that's your success. That is how you're going to make your money, the consumption of it. Okay. So we have the BBC chart. The BBC chart did not use radio. It did not use jukeboxes. It did use sales. It used sales, though, from the retail outlets, from the actual shops, not from the record labels. The shops were also, people could buy the data. A record label would go to the shop and say, here's £1,000. Just say you sold 100 of this record. And it happened. This obviously did happen. We're talking about a business here. This is not a game where my song is better than your song. I'll get the certificate if mine is better. This is not a gold medal thing. This is cash. This is careers. Not just musicians' careers, but business people careers. They will build up a record label, spend hundreds of thousands of pounds getting the infrastructure, the delivery mechanism, the promotion mechanism, the royalty collection mechanism, the distribution, the packaging, etc. All of this stuff they'll spend money on. And if they're not making enough money, they have to figure out ways of cutting corners. And one of the best ways was saying this was a good song when actually it wasn't. It's easy to say it's a good song because I like it, but in terms of the charts, they were saying this is what people wanted and this is what people were willing to spend money on. And it wasn't always true. So when me and my brother were listening to the chart show in the UK in the late 70s, early 80s, we heard a lot of songs which really shouldn't be there. We heard a lot of songs that would look at each other, what is that? They said, awful, awful song. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And sure enough, the next week it wouldn't be there in the chart. And it's a very funny thing to pop in at number 7 and then vanish. But that was the UK chart. It was very volatile. Unlike the US Billboard chart, the UK chart, it was possible for a song to go bang at number 1. In fact, it wasn't very rare. Many times a song would be released, and 3 days later, bang, it's at number 1. That would be actually quite common in the UK. A song would stay in the UK at number 1. It could stay for 20 weeks, but the norm was 1 or 2 weeks. In Billboard, the norm was 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. That's why when we talk about Dark Side of the Moon, the most popular album in Billboard history that stayed in the chart for 10 years, that's Billboard. In the UK chart, it was in and out, much faster. Much faster. Okay. Right. Can these charts be manipulated? Anyone watch TED Talks? You kind of should. It's good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff. Has anyone seen this particular TED Talk, Alex Day? Yeah? Who's seen it? Yeah. So then you know this story. It's quite an interesting story. At about the time when the BBC chart decided to include YouTube into the mix, into the data points, is this all a little complicated? I don't want to make it too complicated on the one hand, but on the other hand, I don't want to oversimplify. Do you understand what I mean by data points? Okay, let me put it in a context you'll understand. Your exams. Okay? You're a guitar player, you got to do history and context, ensemble, you got to do ear training and theory, right? So each of these are data points, right? And at the end of the day, you're going to get a result which makes you a good student or a bad student. It's actually evaluating us as much as it is evaluating you. But you get the idea. So in the history and context class, I will give you 100% or 50% or whatever. But in the big picture, that's only worth 20% maximum. If I give you 100% in history and context, even 100% translates to 20% in your final grade. Your actual subject, piano, drums, guitar, vocals, that I think is 60% or 40%, as it should be. That's your focus. So if you do very well there, you could pass on that alone, theoretically. And that's the way it should be. And the other subjects, of course, they're evaluated accordingly to their importance. It's exactly the same thing here. This is history and context, this is theory, and this is DJ, mixing or producing or audio engineering. Yeah? So they're different data points. They're separated from each other. But the point is, a good student who works his or her ass off on guitar is more likely to get a better grade in history and context. And if they do this, it's pretty unusual to get a bad grade in theory. I mean, in a theory class. So normally the grades are all on roughly the same level. Is this clear? Yeah? I'm actually quite proud with the way I got through that. You're welcome. But yeah, I'm happy with that. Good, because I was figuring out a way to actually make this clear. A data point is nothing but something of value, and then you put it in proportion to its value in the overall picture. Yeah? Okay. So we come to this. Now, in the second half of the 2000s, I think 2006 onwards, the BBC chart started to include data from, as I said, from Apple purchase, not Apple Music, which is streaming now, but to buy your iTunes downloads. It also started to include data from YouTube. Now, YouTube is a very simple, it sounds like a very simple data point. Did you watch the video? You did? Okay, thanks. That's it. One view. You've got one view per IP. And the way YouTube works, if I'm not mistaken, it's 7 seconds. You have to watch 7 seconds from the beginning of the video. You have to watch 7 or more seconds. You're counted as one view. You could watch the whole thing 1,000 times. You'll be counted as one view if it's on the same IP. You watch it 7 seconds or 8 seconds, you're counted one. You watch it 1,000 times, you're counted one. It's a very important point. If you have 5 phones, and you watch 7 seconds here, 6 seconds here, or rather 7, 8 seconds, 9 seconds, on all 5 phones, you're counted as 5. Okay? Even though you've just pressed play, stop for 7 seconds each, you're counted as 5. Versus the same person who passionately loves the song, or may have made the song, has heard it 1,000 times over and over and over again, he's counted as 1. Yeah? Now, because YouTube is strictly on personal preference, it's strictly on your choice. You're not paying for the privilege to hear YouTube. You're not paying for it. In a way you are, because you're subjected to these ads which are thrown into the middle. So you are kind of paying for it in your time. They buy 5 seconds from you to say, hey, do you want to buy this? Do you want to do this? Etc., etc. So that is your payment. Much in the same way mass media gets your attention like radio. Hey, do you want to buy this? It rarely works these days because it's outdated. In your lifetime, I hope to see this whole thing vanish to a much more sensible way of doing things without intrusive ads spoiling the experience of music, at least. Anyway, now on YouTube, there obviously, if you think about it, there's ways of getting views. There's ways of manipulating people to watch for 7 seconds. You could literally start a video. The camera's on me, and I could stand here and say, hang on, the song's going to start. Just give me a few seconds more. Song's going to start. Wait, hang on. Hi, Mom. Okay, fine. Okay, 7 seconds. Actually, I'm not going to play the song now. And step out. That counts as 1 view, and the song doesn't even exist. Now, obviously, people are going to write comments, idiot, Vehrnon, don't trust him, liar, fraud. And frankly, that may even get me more views. But at the end of the day, it's not helping me as a musician. But in principle, there are ways of getting those 7 seconds out, of getting those 7 seconds from people and counting that 1 IP per view. There are ways of doing it. In the UK, the Christmas chart is a very important chart. In fact, in the TED Talk, he talks about, to give context to it, he talks about this movie Love Actually. The romantics amongst you would have seen Love Actually. No romantics. Okay, fine. It's not such an old film, but it shows this aged rock star, this ex-heroin addict rock star who wants to do a comeback with a pop song, and his big dream in life is to have the #1 song. For him, it's not the money. It's a big honor to have the #1 song through Christmas. And it's a very, very keenly contested competition between the various artists who have a song that might get to #1. His song was available at that time. It was released, I think, in November. It was going into December, and people were listening to it. He was getting sales. He was getting downloads. He was getting YouTube views. But he got it into his head as a mission that he has to get to #1. He just had to get to #1 for Christmas. It became a passion for him. Not the music, just the art of manipulating the system to get to #1. Because if he could do that, the next year would be very good. You get to #1 at Christmas, you're booked throughout the whole of the next year. Every single festival, you're going to play your 1 song. But you'll make money from it. And when you're playing at Glastonbury, when you're playing at Nebworth, people see you. They say, actually, it's not that bad. You get more bookings. You do a good job. You make a lot of money. Your career is set. All because of this 1 Christmas #1. During Christmas time, having the #1 song. In YouTube, there's a little backdoor entry into getting numbers. That backdoor entry that he found was a simple thing. There are DJ remixes. There's an analog version, there's an acoustic version, there's a piano-only version, there's a guitar-only version, there is an instrumental version. There's an instrumental version done on computer, an instrumental version done on piano, an instrumental version done on guitar with tambourine. There's an instrumental version on guitar with tambourine with some vocals, but not all. The point is, as long as it's the same person who's written the song, as long as it's the same person who's performing the song in the video, it's all counted as 1. I think he put 15 or 16 different versions, I think, of the same song with the same title. And YouTube, in all their glory, bless their hearts, counted them all as 1 song. Now, those of you who have YouTube channels or have been on YouTube know that when you get to the end of the song, you get suggestions of what to hear next, or what to watch next. You'll also see on the right-hand column, there's a whole bunch of suggestions there. Now, if by chance you like this song that you've just heard, there's a very good chance you want to hear one of the other versions. Now, the other versions aren't bad. They're not as silly as I've made them sound, but they aren't exactly made as usable different versions of the same song. They were just versions of the song to get more views. You understand what I'm getting at? You put 1 song out there, you watch it, I got 1 view. Now, suddenly I say, have you heard the acoustic version of it? Have a listen to that. I've got 2 views from the same song, the same title, the same artist, the same publisher, the same lyricist, the same songwriter. It's all the same song. 2 views from 1 person. And the thing is, the effort I have to put in to get that 1 view in the first place is a huge effort. But the effort I have to put in to get the 2nd and the 3rd and the 4th video viewed is actually very low. It's a very low effort. And when I mean effort, I mean either putting in your time and your wisdom and your creativity, or frankly, money. The investment is either money or time, invariably. And that's what he did. He worked very hard. He's not particularly great as an artist. I mean, there's boy bands out there who make fun of him, so let's not pretend this is a superstar waiting to emerge. He was just a decent artist with a decent song. Christmas Day comes, he's watching on TV, As you get to number 1, number 7 comes, he's not there. Number 6 comes, he's not there. Number 5 comes, he's not there. Number 4 comes, he's at number 4. That's as far as he got. But when you bear in mind, this was not a big-time commercial release from a big record label. He was an unsigned artist. It was an unsigned song. His entire push was on YouTube. He didn't have Universal Music or Sony or Warner Brothers pushing $1 million to make sure he got to number 1. He didn't have that. When you put that into context, he was the proverbial David going up against all these Goliaths. And I forgot the year, but there was a number of big artists like Westlife or Boyzone, I can't remember the exact year, that he was going up against. So he actually managed to manipulate the system. So it can be done. YouTube found out, they said, okay, this is not fair. They fixed it, so you can't do that anymore. But at every step of the game, at every single development in technology, there'll always be ways of manipulating the data, twisting the data to get it something for you. Now, this is not a con, because the chart itself isn't a scientific measurement. It's a rough guide. It's a rough gauge. It's like the Sensex. You look at the share market, the Sensex. The Sensex is a number, a very specific number. But that number is not going to say good or bad. It's open to interpretation. Literally. The one number at Christmas time and it's going to rain means something. The same number in the middle of summer and a heat wave means something else completely. So that number has to be taken in context. And all of these charts, the Billboard, the UK chart, etc., the number 1 song, the number 100 song, the number 50 song, has to be taken in context of that time. If there's a whole bunch of crap songs being released in the middle of summer, and you have the number 1 there, it's not such a big deal. You get to the number 1 at Christmas, when a lot of people are buying music, it's quite a big deal. Getting to number 1 on any chart is a big deal. But the point really is, it's not impossible to manipulate it. YouTube, the world's biggest streaming service. This is the future. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. I don't know what Android, what other services there are. On Apple, we only have Apple Music. But I know on Android, there's quite a few services. But YouTube, hands down, I mean, let me put it in context. If this is the size of YouTube, this whole, like this is a ball over here. This is the size of YouTube, the number of views they get in a year. Okay, if this is the size of it, Spotify is about this big, Apple Music is this big. And everything else is like small, tiny, like thermocol, like those small, small balls or snowflakes. It's tiny compared to the monster that is YouTube. So clearly, this is the way, this is the route in order to manipulate your songs to get to number 1. Now, there's no easy way to do it, but let's have a look at the songs which have done very, very well. I just got this today. It's right up to date. It's like a few hours old, this data. I've gone all the way to 44. Actually, I haven't gone just to 44 for the sake of it. There's 44 songs on YouTube which have been seen by over 1 billion IPs. These are the songs in order. Gangnam Style, See You Again, Sorry. Uptown Funk is there. The number over here, 2.75 billion. 2.75 billion IP addresses. Bear in mind, a song like this, it just reflects an IP address. Hands up all those people who've only seen Gangnam Style once, and that too not the entire song. Okay, more than I thought. Hands up all those who've seen Gangnam Style more than once, the entire song. So there you go. It balances out. The song is actually more popular than the 2.7 number up there. Now, when you bear in mind the context of the world population, roughly 7 billion. 7 billion. This is nearly 1/3. You get the significance of this number. You take 3 random people on the planet. Spaceman comes down. He's not a spaceman. He's an alien. Comes down, says, you, and you. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One of them would have seen this song. One of them would have seen this one Gangnam Style song. This is the most popular song in the history of the world. More popular than Happy Birthday. You go to Africa, you go to certain parts of Siberia, you say, it's my birthday, you'll sing for me. They say, what's the song? I don't know. Say, do you know Gangnam Style? Ha, that I know. This is the most popular song in the world. That's the significance of that number. That number is 2.7, 2.5, 2.75 billion. Forget about it. We can't comprehend what 1 million is. It's tough. With 1 billion, it's a ridiculous number. And all of these songs, down to number 22, 1.3 billion. I'm sure you recognize a lot of these songs by title. If not, if you haven't seen them, I'm sure you recognize at least the title, the artists. The most successful artist on YouTube right now, who's the most successful artist, do you think? Not bad. It is Justin Bieber, followed very closely by Taylor Swift. Justin Bieber's got no less than 4 songs in what I'm calling the billion view club. 1 billion views. He's got 4 different songs. This is the first half of the billion list. This is the second half. See, Justin's come, one is there, he's come again with somebody else. And what's really exciting, I put the year over here, so you can see a song that's come in the last 12 months, it's already got 1 billion views, 1.2 billion views. This is what we came for. This is what you came for, apparently. And then you got songs like this, the party, what is this? Rock the party. It's not rock the party. It's a party rock is in the house tonight. Okay, so 1.2 billion. But this took 6 years to reach there. It took 6 years to get this number. This song has done it in the last 12 months. This is all data. It's not going to really help in making a chart together right now unless we put this in context. This is historical data. It's like looking at the Beatles or looking at Metallica or looking at Madonna, looking at Michael Jackson and saying they're the best artists in the world. But to you, there's no relevance for these artists because they're all artists from the 90s and from the 80s. And the reason they sold so many songs is simply they've had more time to do it. They're older artists. They're older. But when you look at YouTube, it's certainly a young pop music game. You have Avicii is young and pop. Magic, Rude. That's a song when he asked that girl, father, to marry him, right? And he says, no, I don't want to marry you. Marry my daughter instead. It's a confusing song. It's a very confusing song. You look at all these songs and you get an idea of what average people on YouTube around the world are looking at. And I advise you to have a look at this list. I got this from Wikipedia because it's the easiest access to data. But I advise you to type in top songs or top viewed songs on YouTube. Just have a look at it. It'll give you an insight. I'm not suggesting for a second that you become a Bieber or you become a Swift or something like that. But understanding what is it that they're doing that's working so bloody well. Because they are doing something that's working well. It's easy to say Gangnam Style is a blip and it doesn't belong there because it's not even in English. But I find that even more fascinating that a song that's not in English, because most of these songs, almost all of them, but in terms of YouTube streaming music videos, the vast majority are English. Maybe there's something with agenda, maybe a close look. You'll see a few things in there. There's some songs here which are pretty inspirational. You got Macklemore down here, which certainly is, it may not be inspirational, but it's certainly not classic hip-hop. It's the opposite of bling in hip-hop. That's what people wanted to see. That's uplifting. That's interesting. Taylor Swift, bless her heart, she's in there 3 times. Chainsmokers is right here. Less than 7 months is right here. This is the song in the backseat of the Rover, right? you're doing gigs outside, the temperature becomes very important to you per day. And if you get an average of the whole year and you're doing a festival, you can say, well, this is the average temperature going to be. An even better thing to know on data, is it going to rain or not? I'm doing a festival in February in Bombay. What are the chances of it raining? I know for a fact the chances are actually 1 in 300. It's very, very low chance it's going to rain in February, January, February. Numbers, it most probably won't. But if we gauge an opinion here, which is what will the best song, it just means that that song has probably been sold more than any other song, played on radio more than any other song, or played on the jukebox more than any other song, or streamed on Spotify, Apple Music more than any other song, or purchased on iTunes more than any other song in that time period, typically a week, and in that region. So the number one song is a number one song is a number one song. The question to ask is what makes it number one? When we come to streaming, this is what we have in India. Streaming music. It didn't take long. I just typed in streaming music image and I got this. Savan, Ghana, they're the big guys. But this is where it gets interesting. Hangama are really nice guys. They were very close to a company called T-Series, very, very close. And T-Series is the country's biggest record label. And some of you know the background, but what you probably don't know is that they actually are the biggest record label in the country, not by a bit, by a lot. At any one point in time, they represent anywhere between 60 and 40% of commercial music in India. That's huge. That's mega. That's massive. I'm not talking about ambiguous numbers. It's not a guess. I'm talking about actual sales. I'm talking about streams. I'm talking about radio programming. I've signed contracts. We've negotiated for 6 months, fighting over how much commitment we have to play T-Series, play their songs. So I had to find out, are they really that big? And I came back saying, okay, they are that big. Now, Hangama is very close to T-Series. If you're close to T-Series, it means you're not going to be close to the other record labels. So when Hangama gives numbers, I'm not accusing them for 1 second of fudging their numbers and giving inaccurate data. But I am pointing out that if I was managing Hangama, that's what I would do. They're my friends. I want to see them doing well. This is business. This is not prize. But if my company works well, if I can push the numbers up, I'll buy another car. Then I'll buy another car. I'm not going to buy cars, but you get my point, right? It just makes me more successful. Actually, this is not my thing at all, and you guys know that, but you get the point. Now, Ghana.com is owned, if I'm not mistaken, by Times. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it's owned by Times. Times Music have a record label. They also have a radio station with Radio Mirchi. Times Music is there as a record label. They're pretty good. And Radio Mirchi. So it's all one group. So if Times Music release an artist, and the fact is Times Music have not done this, but if they release an artist, isn't it in their interest to fudge and say number 1 or number 2 or number 3 on Ghana? And Radio Mirchi own a Mirchi Top 20 and put the same song there? They actually used to do this before they were gauging the numbers. Now things are out in the open. Now people are getting educated on what these numbers are. And people don't take the Times of India Mirchi chart so seriously. I believe the new Mirchi Top 20 is accurately representing what the songs are. But in the old days, it was just discussed in the conference room, which number 1, okay, put that there. There was no numbers to base this on. I'm not criticizing Radio Mirchi. I had a chart in all the stations I worked for, and you can trust me, it wasn't exactly quantifiable data. What's your favorite song? Oh, I like that song too. Number 1? Okay, number 2. Let's put that song again, number 1. Okay, thumbs up. Can we go home now? Let's go. That's how we created the charts. So when you hear a Red FM chart in the old days from 2005, that was me. And a lot of the time it was called a dartboard chart. You know what a dartboard chart is? A dartboard chart, I mean, these will take like a lot of money, a lot of effort to collate. A dartboard chart is you put the names of the song on a board, you hold a dart in your hand and you throw it behind you. And you see where it lands. And you say, okay, fine, that's it. It saves time. It's as accurate without data. It's as accurate as anything. And it's quick. We didn't actually do this. It's an analogy for what's actually done in offices. Why would you want to waste time trying to quantify data which doesn't exist? If you don't have the data, how can you quantify it? How can we quantify it? How can anyone double check? If I say this song is a number 1, In 2005, there was an artist called Himesh Reshammiya. This is the reaction I expected. What you don't know, he wasn't just one of the most popular artists that year. He was head and shoulders the most popular artist that year, because that was the year that I started doing major research. I got people from outside to come in and use digital equipment to do research and radio to actually ascertain what are the best songs. Now, if you remember at that time, Himesh had no less than 7 or 8 massive, massive songs. What you don't know probably, all of those songs were #1 songs. They actually were #1. The research I did was not so much to categorize the songs in terms of what people were spending money on or what people wanted to see. I strictly wanted to know what they wanted to listen to when no one else was telling them what to hear. It's a very important question, and it's a question you're going to have to ask yourself about your audience later on. You can make a song which you think is nice for them, and maybe around their friends, they'll say, yeah, heavy metal, I've seen this a lot, heavy metal. And it's great, people like heavy metal. But I got a feeling a lot of people like wearing the heavy metal shirts more than the bands that's written on it. And that's fine. I've got no problem with that, no problem at all. But it's important for pros like you guys to understand the reality. If you look at a heavy metal gig right now, you'll see a lot of people going there who don't know what's going on. And a lot of people who are there would know exactly what's going on, but they don't look like metalheads. You get the point I'm trying to make? Okay, so where were we? Okay, charts. This is Binaka Geet Mala, Amin Sayani. Out and out musician. How did you discover music then? I don't know. I've got no answers. Again, it's important for you to try and find these answers and try and figure out. Once you get there, then you can try and use that and try and use it to your advantage. How do people select the songs they like? Mostly you'll find out it's from things called listicles. You know what a listicle is? You go on BuzzFeed. It's nothing but listicles. The top 10 ugliest boys in Bombay. There's a listicle for that. If there isn't, I shall make it. The top 10 beers in Bombay. The top 10 cutest puppies. That's something we've all seen. It's a listicle. If you just give one, it's like, why should I bother? 10? Okay, I'll look at it now. There must be 3 I like, right? It's called a listicle. Radio use it a lot. All these online publications, BuzzFeed, Huffington, etc., First Post, they love listicles. It's quick, short bites of stuff going on. Let's not call it journalism. Let's just call it attention-getting. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're selling ads after all. But a listicle, in this case, is exactly the same as a chart. What are the top 10 songs in Bombay? What are the top 10 songs in Bombay today for 18 to 19-year-old girls? Now, that is not something that's so obvious. The data is out there, by the way. Somebody can get this data if they look for it. It may not be relevant to you unless you're a 16-year-old boy who considers yourself to be extremely cute. I don't know, Sachin Bieber or something. You knew it was coming. So the way people select their songs is usually from lists or usually from friends who don't suggest songs, but they suggest lists. Even on Apple Music, you get those Apple curated lists. It's not a countdown from 1 to 50, but it is a list of songs collected by group. Okay. Is it true that a song you've heard over and over becomes a hit? Well, okay, 1 out of 50, it's still a point, right? Well, it's a point. I mean, you understand what I'm trying to say. On Facebook, if you understand the consumption pattern, it's a script there that has to be something to read in order to suck you in. You'll see a person's mouth moving, they're doing this, they're singing, you know they're singing. But unless there's something there saying, turn on the audio. I don't mean literally turn on the audio, but giving you a reason, what's called a call to action, to press the button to turn on the audio. Most of us carry on with the scroll. Most of us don't bother with it. And even then, it doesn't matter, because once you've gone through 3 seconds, I think, on Facebook, the video is counted as a view. And I think on Facebook, it's counted over and over and over. It's not per IP. I'm not too sure on that. Anyway, what is the value of data? Surely you can see the value of data. It's all out. All this data is out there. Spotify have a chart. iTunes have a chart. Apple have charts. They have charts for regions. They have charts for genre. Go out there and find them. See where you guys fit in. See where your music fits in. See where the data can help you and use it to your best ability. That's really it. If there's any questions, it's on data, on numbers. So. Like, no, okay. Personally, I mean, I'm not in the business anymore. Savan and Ghana have both gone non-music original, or like the podcast style. I think if they keep the price, if they keep the cost down, and they don't focus on existing celebrities, and they focus on creating their own audio celebrities based on the content, there's a healthy future there, a very healthy future. Let me just ask quickly, hands up if you use SoundCloud. 1, 2, it's about 3/4 of you. Just keep your hands up, put your hands high up, high up. If you have SoundCloud on your phone or you use it on a regular basis, put your hands up. It's roughly 3/4, at least 2/3. Okay, thanks. Same thing for Spotify. Anyone on Spotify? That doesn't seem to matter. That's why I asked the question. Okay, that's good. There's a good number of that. What are the other services? Okay, Ghana, Hangama, Savan. So SoundCloud, I mean, this is what I was frankly hoping for, because SoundCloud is the vehicle. It's absolutely the right place, especially for musicians. But even there, the numbers they're releasing, they're not releasing all their numbers, how people, what people, etc. But you put a song out there, it's tough to promote, but when it works, good God, it works very well. Very, very, very well. I'm a big, big fan of SoundCloud versus the other guys. It's as you say, the other guys are much more commercial. Either you listen to a commercial in the audio stream, or there's a commercial on the app, etc. So it's numbers-based, it's money-based. Once it's money-based, I mean, everything's based around money, I agree, but once it's money-based and that becomes the primary reason for doing it, paying salaries, paying for office rent, etc., the quality of content will be compromised. SoundCloud is also about money, I'm sure. It's just I feel personally, I think you would also all agree that SoundCloud is a little more authentic. It's certainly a little more musician-friendly. We do discover our friends and our friends' friends who make music on SoundCloud. We wouldn't discover that on Savan Ghana. Yeah? Big fan of SoundCloud. I think it's an excellent application. Okay? Thank you very much for being here and listening to this.